notification. All right. For the audience that doesn't know you, feel free to introduce yourself.
Hi guys, my name is Lord Miles. I'm a last great British explorer, or at least trying to be. And currently I'm on one of the best podcasts on the internet.
The universe, I'm willing to say. No,
So true.
we're getting there. We're getting there. No, so I got introduced to you from a mutual friend of ours by the name of Luke Basso. Great kid. Well, he's a year older than me, but I think I have the right to call him a kid. But he told me a lot about you, and he hooked me in with this one line. He got kidnapped by the Taliban. So, if that doesn't hook somebody in, I don't know what would.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, it does happen to the best of us.
Of course.
Except for yours truly, as of yet. But, anyways, just tell that story. I know you've told it a million times, but you got to tell that story first.
No, of course. It's just a normal story, happens to every old Joe. So it was my third trip or fourth trip to Afghanistan at the time. I was trying to open a gold mine because there's a lot of minerals in Afghanistan. Seems like a great plan. What could go wrong? But guess what? Something did go wrong. The Taliban, they cornered me and they put guns to me and they drove me to Kabul to a prison where I was tried by their intelligence department called the GDI, which is the equivalent of their CIA or MI6. And they thought I was a spy, basically. So after 2 weeks, my friends were released and I was left alone in Afghanistan. And I spent 8 months there. Slowly, they realized I wasn't a spy. I'm just a silly fella. I'm not fed. I'm well fed, but not fed myself. And then afterwards, they gave me compensation. They gave me the keys to an apartment to say sorry for keeping me for 8 months. And ever since, I've been back and forth doing some business there. And somehow it's worked out. And it was a lovely holiday, lovely to get away from it all. And thankfully, no nagging wife for 8 months and no rent.
One thing that I'm definitely, and this is, just shocking to me. Like, I have your videos pulled up too, alongside some notes and questions. I'm shocked at how little traction, like, some of these videos have gotten. Like, some of these, like, your channel deserves more, right? This is shocking to me, right? How old is your channel? So your first video was 3 years ago, right? And you only have 167,000 subscribers for literally getting kidnapped by the Taliban, right?
Yeah, well, it's a slow burner. Honestly, 3 years ago, I uploaded just a random video. It wasn't a YouTube career thing. And when I uploaded shooting the Taliban, that got 1 million views just randomly. I thought, that's amazing. It's a real simple video filmed on a cheap GoPro, and it wasn't well edited. Got 1 million views, very happy. And then I got kidnapped. And after that, I started uploading regularly. About 6 months ago, I started doing weekly uploads. But sadly, the videos haven't done too well. So I'm making small adjustments, and hopefully I come back with a vengeance. Some of my videos have done really well at 200K, 300K, 800K. I'm just trying to find that sweet spot. But hopefully I'll earn my place in YouTube, and hopefully I'm not blacklisted. But you never know. I don't think YouTube will like Taliban content. They're very Taliban phobic. Very sad to see.
Well, as somebody myself who wants to get Kim Jong-un on the podcast, I don't really have a problem with collaborating with controversial individuals, as long as you're not, entirely portraying them in a positive light. But, with you, you're regarded as like a danger tourist. I think that was like in one of your interviews. And you might have even said to yourself, you're a danger tourist, right? You're literally going on to Snake Island in Brazil. You're going to Osama bin Laden's caves. Other times you're just reviewing countries. But, what, and also North Sentinel Island. That's another one. Talk to me about that video, because that's
sure.
Island.
Well, I'm like any British person who likes to travel. I'm just trying to get away from the other dangerous island, which is known as England. London's very dangerous nowadays. There's several stabbings that have happened in London, but only one recent stabbing that's happened on North Sentinel Island. Think about it. Must be a safer place. But no, as the last great British explorer, I've got to look at the list of the most dangerous places on Earth. And one of them was Afghanistan. I think I've perfected that. The other was Snake Island in Brazil. I was the first tourist to survive it, which is amazing. And I was very sneaky about it. Most people, when they go to the island, they die. And of course, it's not legal to go to the island, but who really cares at the end of the day? And I look at North Sentinel Island, and I think, the British managed to go there 200 years ago, and no one's really documented it since. It's such an obscure place with so many unknowns, and I think that's just fascinating. I would love to go there in a suit of medieval armor that can't be pierced with arrows, fingers crossed. document the entire thing, have GoPros strapped to me. I would love to go to the center of the island, film it, document their language. Their language hasn't even been documented on audio. I would love to get one of those compound bows and take it home with me that they build. I would love to learn a few words of their unknown language. I would love to even, form some diplomatic relations to some degree. There's a lot of stuff you can do with uncontacted tribes, and there is a protocol for contacting these sorts of people that have been done in the Amazon rainforest or remote parts of the world. I don't see why I can't do it with North Central Islands. And honestly, if I die, that's my choice, I guess. I'm very happy to die, but something tells me God has a very good sense of humor, and I think I might just survive by the skin of my teeth.
So out of all the videos that you've made, what point were you really the most scared? What was the
Mm.
point where you're like, I fucked up? Like, this was a shitty decision. Probably all of them, but there's one particular that I know you probably think about.
So true. I would say Snake Island. When I was at the top, I was having heat stroke because I was wearing like 30, 40 kilograms of medieval armor in the middle of a Brazilian summer. And I didn't bring enough water, so I was just dying of thirst. And then, I can't take off the suit of armor. If I do, the snakes can bite me. However, I get a radio call from the boat that smuggled me on the island saying, Miles, the Coast Guard is coming, the Navy patrol is coming. They're like 20 minutes away. You need to get on the boat right now, otherwise you're going to Brazilian jail. And it's like minimum 10 years in jail. Can't be nice. So at that point, I put all my faith in God, stripped off medieval armor to jeans and t-shirt and trainers, and then ran through the thick foliage like my life depended on it, because it kind of did. And of course, one bite from this snake would liquefy my insides and kill me. However, I just kept running, 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 made it to the speedboat, and escaped from the Navy. Somehow I survived that. Shouldn't have survived it. I was not in control of that situation one bit. The other most dangerous thing, I would say, or the thing I most regret, is I was in a cell in Taliban prison 2 weeks in, and I hadn't seen the sunlight in 2 weeks. I had my handcuffs on, my legs were tied together with chains, and in that room, in my small cell, outside that small cell, there were other cells. I came across several people that were crying, and I spoke to the only British speaker in there, and apparently they were all ISIS fighters who were captured by the Taliban and were being executed. So that ran through my mind. Hey, am I being executed? This place is horrific. What's happened? How long am I gonna be here? You've heard of stories of people being stuck in foreign countries for 10 years in jail. Imagine being in a basement with no form of entertainment, nothing but your mind, for 2 weeks straight with no idea what's happening. And, your thoughts go to bad places and you think, oh, I really did get myself into a pickle here. It worked out though, but you do create some doubts there.
So my question is, I think this is the most obvious question. Why? Right? Like, why are you making these videos? Like, what? Because I don't meet people every day that, want to go to Snake Island and then risk getting 10 years in Brazil, at best in prison. That's the best case scenario, right? Most people aren't putting them in those situations where they're either going to get killed, put in prison, a mixture of the two. Most people aren't doing that. Why do you do that?
Well, they have common sense, I think. But honestly, I've fallen into it with the fall of Kabul. I was there accidentally, and I became notable online. And to be honest, I just think I'm good at it. Like, I'm somewhat built for this. It gives me some adrenaline, of course, but that's not exactly why I do it. I make money off it. I think I'm good at it. I couldn't see myself doing any other job. I see myself going down in history. I see this as something that interests me. I adore the history of it, the logistics, the tactics, the what it could bring me, the people I can meet. Hey, what was it? 7 years ago, I was homeless on the streets of Birmingham, which is like British Detroit, thinking I was going to die because I wasn't going to get to university. I was remaining homeless forever. And now I'm meeting people that are worth $100 million, or I'm meeting people who are just famous, like my idols, and they come up to me and say, "Oh, Miles, God, I've been following you for a while. I'm a great fan. And I'm like, dude, I'm a fan. It feels great sometimes, but I just overall enjoy it. Same with any career. It feels like the thing I'm meant to do. And of course, the fame helps a little bit, the money helps. But if I was making minimum wage, I would still do it because I enjoy that much. An office job for me would just be absolutely miserable. I like to keep my mind busy. And of course, there's an unlimited amount of work to do here when trying to deal with every single nation and every single adventure.
Well, so my next question, and well, this is like I don't take this as an uncomfortable question, but how are you making money, right? Because like
Yeah, sure.
how are you making money to fund all this? Because it's I don't see like a Patreon on your page, or anything like that. Are you just making money off ad revenue? Like, how are you? Do you have a job on the side? Like, what is it?
Yeah, sure. So I have a Ko-fi, which is like Patreon, but you get to keep more of the revenue. So per month, I get a few thousand in donations in exchange for group chat access and some other things. I also sell merchandise, so either clothing, Taliban merch, or some other things too. That makes about 160,000 British pounds last year, which is about $200,000 or just below it. Crazy, I know, but the numbers are true. I also am starting the Afghanistan gold mine, so we're still in that process, and I've got some seed funding for that. So I've got a bunch of money regarding that. I don't have to pay income tax because I'm not a British tax resident, so because I'm always on the road and I don't own property in the UK, it means I don't have to pay any income tax, which of course does help. The government does swindle us, but I'm exempt, thankfully. I also sell some very rare antiques. So there's some items I can find that I sell to private buyers for like 10 grand, 15 grand, because no one's willing to go to Afghanistan and really look for these types of things. For example, next month, I'm going back to Tora Bora. I found Osama bin Laden's Toyota Hilux pickup truck he was photographed with, and I'm buying that for about $7,500. And I'm going to sell it for at least high six figures, hopefully. I've turned down a 200K offer. And in England, the average salary is about $40,000 a year before taxes. So this puts me above average and it's working out so far. I've also got some sponsorships for my videos. So I believe per 100,000 views, you can charge them $2,000 to $4,000. And I've got some other sponsors who just generally like me, who pay me a little bit more per month as well. What else too? Yeah, I mentioned clothing as well. So I did have some custom clothing I did one-off sales for. I'm looking to increase that too. Um, and yeah, I think that's it. Also, I think also I've done some charity work as well, which is people have DM me saying, "Hey, Miles, I like what you did in South Sudan. I like what you did in XYZ country. It was really good to hear what you did for these people. I'd like to donate money to you personally, not to the charity work." And I go, "You sure?" And they're like, "Yep, here's a little bit of money. You're a good guy. Enjoy." And I say, "Well, thank you. I appreciate that." So, yeah, behind the scenes, it can be lucrative. I think I'm doing well. Of course, maybe in a year or two, might not be so lucrative, or maybe it will double in size. I'm not too sure, but I'm taking every step possible to try and make more money so I can fund more extreme adventures.
How old are you, by the way?
25, but the hairline says 40. What about yourself, my man?
18.
18. I thought you said 8 for a second. I was like, damn, you're aging fast.
No,
18 is good. Bright
yeah,
future ahead.
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, likewise to you. You're only 25, so
I'll be dead at 27, guaranteed. Nah, I'm kidding. But we'll see. Come to my
well,
funeral.
I will. I will. I will. Me and Luke will be there.
Thank you.
Yeah. No. Kim Jong Un will hopefully be there too because he'll be on the podcast at some point.
I do like that man from True Korea. Very good. I'm trying to throw a North Korean party rather soon. So in the North Korean embassy in Bulgaria, you can actually rent the venue hall in the
Really?
embassy. Yes. And there's no website for it. I tried emailing them, calling them. They just don't respond because it's an embassy that's so busy and no embassy really responds to phone calls or emails most of the time. Only Western ones occasionally do. So
Right.
I'm going to put together some time and just pop down to Bulgaria and try and negotiate with the North Koreans. And I can rent out their venue. I'll say to them, listen, we want to throw a North Korean party. That's my idea. We have some traditional North Korean clothing we could probably import from China legally. The North Korean embassy staff, we can get them to cook traditional North Korean food. do North Korean karaoke, drink North Korean alcohol. I think I'll make an exception from not drinking alcohol if it's a North Korean party. And I think it'd be a cool video if we invite some influencers. And it will obviously let me get it in with North Korea. There's some big collab in the future. I'm sure what can go wrong? At least I'm not stealing posters off the wall of girls.
That would be awesome. An interview with, because you got to remember, the guy Kim Jong Un has never been interviewed by anybody ever, right? So he's never done an interview, not one, not like maybe everybody's done an interview. Xi Jinping's done an interview, Putin's done many interviews, Donald Trump many interviews. But then you get Kim Jong Un who's never done an interview. Even Osama bin Laden did an interview.
Actually, good point. Good point. Wow. So if you're the first, wow, that'd be exceptional. Imagine you would be on Tucker Carlson, you'll be on the news for a week straight. Instant fame, instant notoriety, instant access to other people of certain calibers. Yeah, that'd be tough. But how do you think you'll negotiate Kim Jong Un to do it?
Well, so you want to know something funny? Do you know what the Full Send podcast is?
I've heard of it, but I haven't watched it. Do explain.
So it was created by this group called Nelk. Like it doesn't really matter. There's just like a group of former prank YouTubers. Like now they do more like, you know, helping a 40-year-old guy lose his virginity, like those types of videos. They're a funny group of people, but they also are known for getting some of the fucking craziest interviews like on podcasts in the world, and like the most famous people. Like they've had, I'm trying to think of who they've had. They've had Elon Musk, Donald Trump. They've had all these really big interviews, and they had Dennis Rodman on. You know who Dennis Rodman is?
Yeah, who's friends with Kim Jong Un. So yeah, they're trying to do something there. Yes.
Yeah. So they asked him, and they're like, "Can we get him on?" And because they didn't ask him immediately because that's rude. So they asked him like later on, and they said to him, you know, "Can we have him on?" And he's like, "You could try, but he's never gonna do it." And so that was basically the answer. And if Dennis Rodman's telling you that, who's basically Kim Jong Un's like closest thing to a connection to the Americas, it's definitely gonna be hard. But then again, Trump was also the first president to go to North Korea, so it's not impossible.
I think what you would do is you would do some projects with North Korea that wouldn't violate sanctions, of course. You would visit a few times. You would obviously prove yourself as someone who's not like an asshole, to put it lightly. And then you would approach them with the idea that this could bridge the gap diplomatically, and how you would want North Korea to film and edit it. Because then that means you're not going to throw a stupid question in there that will make him look bad. You know, you're not going to try and undermine him. And I think that could be quite good because it'll give the North Koreans enough control and confidence that, you know, it's going to be a good job. And of course, if he, and you probably, I don't know, maybe when Kim Jong Un speaks, he has a list for maybe or something, or maybe he just doesn't like answering questions in general. There's a certain way he can do it, where he can edit it so he doesn't look like what he fears he could look like. You know, he's an interesting guy. So many people have done psychological analysis videos on Kim Jong Un, and they're all saying different things. It's just really tough to understand where he is mentally and what he thinks of certain ideas, because it's such a closed-off country. But if you manage to do it, that's like North Central Island of interviews.
Well, it's like that times 1,000, because North Central Island is like a group of people. You can somehow reach out to them. It's hard, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, you just turn up. But Kim Jong Un, he's got a whole army stopping you in the most isolated country in the world, one of the most infamous people. The entire CIA, MI6 are trying to get into access with Kim Jong Un. But if you just walked in there, like, oh, no problem, guys, I managed it. I think you'll get a lot of job offers.
Well, you know, it would definitely be interesting, because another thing too is even world leaders talk about him like in a very mysterious light. Like they either refer to him as like a complete joke, or they refer to him as like the most interesting person they've ever met. Even Trump, who like at one point like was threatened by him, he threatened him back in this like very infamous quote by Donald Trump, where he's like, "Oh, Kim Jong Un called him and was saying that he has a big red button on his desk." Trump responded by saying, "I have a bigger one than it actually works. Like, fuck you." And rightfully so. Like, but anyways, later on in an interview, he got asked like, "Oh, use one word to describe Donald Trump." Or not Donald Trump, Kim Jong Un. And
Yes.
he goes, interesting, very interesting, which I find in and of itself interesting that he would say that. But yeah, no, I would love to get an interview with Kim Jong Un. We'd have to talk about this. This would be the greatest interview ever, to get Kim Jong Un on the podcast. But we'll talk about that. In any event, to continue asking about you, what is the video you're most proud of?
I would say the Tora Bora video, because when it was filmed only in 2 days, actually a day and a half, and no one had ever been there to film what I showed. No one's got access to Osama bin Laden's colleagues, I guess. Um, and we got to film a range of emotions with these people. In the end, I think we captivated a lot of people when they saw it and realized these people are going through some weird, unique situations, and these people, just had no idea about 9/11. It's a crazy story. And at the same time, we managed to do a GoFundMe for one of the village old men who was basically struggling with his children who were damaged during the war. And his house was falling down, and they didn't have enough food to eat due to famine. It was nice to do a good thing, and I think the video is edited quite well, and I think it's very Lawrence of Arabia-esque, if that makes sense. But also, I look at my own content and I cringe because I hate, contrary to popular belief, I don't like hearing my own voice. And at the same time, I would always want to tweak things. I just don't like the way I look on camera, to put it lightly. When you look in the mirror, you go, "Oh God, I went outside looking like that." Always. So same thing, really. But I like the Tora Bora video the most. It was a good video, but hopefully I'll do more like that.
Do you ever see yourself doing more like investigative pieces? Like rich and powerful, like billionaire type stories? Because I've seen people do stuff like that, where it's like, oh, try to go to Epstein Island, trying to do stuff like that. Do you ever see yourself doing something like that?
I could actually, because there are some countries where there's an undertone of things being very, very bad, and everyone knows it, but no one discusses it. There's some African countries, such as Eritrea, where it's similar to North Korea, where you can't travel from one region to another. There's no way you can receive money from abroad. You get taxed to hell. Everyone has to join the military. People get treated like slaves. But at the same time, very few people have had access to that country. And it'd be very good to expose it, or at least go in there and see what's going on. There's even rumors of, for example, in northern Eritrea, there's a rumor that the Holy Grail has been buried there. And it's kept in some secret compound by some ancient Christians that passed down the mantle of responsibility of guarding it. And if you try and go close, they will just kill you and hide the body. So I'd love to do investigative stuff like that. The other thing I've done, though, it's not rich and powerful people, but it's exposing Indians on X who are trying to pretend to be Western. Many people who are terminally unlike like me will see on X, there's a bunch of Indians pretending to be American or British nationalists, just saying the most generic right-wing slop on the internet, just to get X ad revenue, because it's more than the average pay in their country. So we're making $400-500 a month by saying stuff like, "Oh, Trump has friend to nuke Pakistan. Do you agree with this?" And it's just shockingly funny. So I've started DMing these people saying, "Hey, India check. Can you show me some proof that you're actually American?" And they either block me or they fumble the entire proof. They don't speak English well. They have an accent. And from there, you can just expose these people. And it's done a lot of good. I don't like people lying about these sort of things.
So the next person, we're talking about allegedly bad people.
Yes.
Let's talk about somebody very controversial that you had affiliations with, that you did a collaboration with. Some might say arguably more controversial than the Taliban, which is crazy for me to say that.
Good point. Yes.
So how did that come about? Because I watched that over, and the way he introduced you, he's like, oh, there's very few people that are as interesting as me, if not more. And this guy and that's a big compliment. When Tate's saying this guy did something better than me, you did something right. So where did
He's a
that
kind guy. basically, I knew about Tate before he became famous. So one day he messaged me saying, "Hey," he went by a different name back then, and Peter said, "Hey, can you give me a shout out? I'll pay you $1,000 in crypto." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Paid advertising like you would with a paid sponsorship on YouTube. So I posted, "Hey, there's this guy. This is what he does. Pretty interesting." And then about a year later, he became rather famous. Andrew Tate, of course. And then I went to meet him in London, and I gave him a Taliban flag because, you know, if a man is rich, he has pretty much everything. So why not give him something? That's very hard to obtain. You can't buy that on Amazon. And I thought it was funny. It was just nice to meet someone like that. Didn't know anything about the allegations, of course. And then when I got out of Taliban prison, Andrew Tate got out of prison around the same time. Just total coincidence. And he was like, "Hey, you want to go on my podcast?" And I thought, well, you know, he's paying to fly me out. He's paying me some money to do it. Um, I was going to go on Tucker Carlson, but my US visa got revoked, which sucked because the American government just thought, oh, you know, I Googled this guy who was in Taliban prison. We don't like it. So I was like, yeah, I'll go with Andrew Tate. Why not? And of course, at the time, the allegations weren't either well known or there was not enough evidence to support it. And, you know, most people back then were kind of going towards the end of, he might be innocent. And I always give people the benefit of the doubt with these things. So I went on his podcast. You know, we had a good conversation. Nothing dodgy happened, of course. He was very kind to me, upstanding guy, very respectful to me. Same with Tristan too, and the other brother, the third one. And then afterwards, I just left, flew home, and then that's the last collab I've done with Andrew Tate. Basically, the court case is obviously progressed right now, and more evidence have come out. Again, I'm not too sure what's genuine and what's not, because a lot of things have come out as fake. A few things still stand up right with genuineness. To be honest, I haven't been following it too much because I haven't even interacted with Tate. If the allegations come and show that he was undeniably guilty, he's done some horrific things like sex trafficking and beating women, of course I condone it and I wouldn't follow him. But if he comes out and, you know, there's no real evidence, or the evidence is proven to be fake, or there's some other information, I'm not going to be the court of public opinions. I don't have 20 hours to look through everything and make an informed decision. He's just someone I went on a podcast with who's very kind to me, which I respect, and I'm going to leave it at that, basically. Because otherwise, I'm dividing myself amongst 500 different influencers who have all their own factions. I'll go on a podcast with anyone. I'll go on a podcast with the Taliban, Kim Jong-un, Andrew Tate, God, Adolf Hitler. If Epstein was still alive, I would chill with him on his islands. I really went as a kid. It'll be good to return as an adult. I'm just kidding. But honestly, I don't know anything about the situation beyond that the situation is still ongoing. I do hope he's innocent, of course, because I don't want those things to be true, you know. But it's tough. Again, in university, I had an allegation against me that was completely false. And I was very paranoid back then. I still am now, especially amongst some women. Basically, I was messaging this one girl. Turns out, I found out like a year later, she was actually diagnosed bipolar, and explained a lot. Basically, she was saying, "Hey, want to come around to mine?" I was like, "No, I'd rather be a friend." Basically, I was talking to her, and then she threatened me on the phone saying, "I'm going to make allegations against you." I reported to the university, and she was basically kicked out. But it's because I audio recorded that conversation. Now, of course, if I had nothing, it's her word against mine. And God, in 2018, 2019, that would have ruined me, despite me not doing anything. I never even met the lady in real life. But thankfully, I covered my tracks. So I understand how information can be very heavily manipulated. And to be honest, I really don't form too many opinions regarding people because I know there's so much information on either side. I think it's hard to explain, but I think you guys get what I mean.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate circumstance. Also, too, his manager follows me on Instagram, so I can't.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I can't say too much bad about him. No. So yeah, I mean, it seems like you definitely. So actually, here's another question: why start the channel? Because you're mentioning about university, and you know, I'm going to say you're a little bit older than me. And when this happened, So with that being said, why did you start the channel? Right? Like why did you go out of you're only 3 years ago, so you were 22 at the time you started the channel,
Mm,
uh, give or take. So why did you start it? Right? What?
yeah,
And I'm looking at your first video. It's sneaking into a resort for free drinks, and immediately 2 videos later, it's vibing in Chernobyl. So
so true. Just the normal pipeline, isn't it? Well, I always was curious about YouTube. I watched YouTube as like an 11-year-old in 2011. I was very interested in that sort of world. I understood the dynamics of it. I knew what made a good YouTube video. And a small part of me always wanted to be a YouTuber. No one has ever found it yet, but there's a very old channel under my name that made Minecraft Let's Play videos back in like 2013. That was complete cringe. And I lost the password, so I can't delete those videos. So hopefully no one ever finds it. But I thought, I can post on X, and make some posts, but who wants to do an adventure through social media posts? You need to make videos, you need to show things, you need to make documentaries. That's where the real money is. And also, it's how you grow as a person, grow as an adventurer. And I thought, it would be a good way to not only sustain myself financially, but also just show to the world what I'm doing. Again, I can take a selfie on Snake Island. No one's going to believe it, and it's such a missed opportunity to document it on video. So I thought, why not just do YouTube? When I was first going to South Sudan, I did a GoFundMe to raise some money for it because that's how it started off. And in one of those videos, I said, listen, I'm going to dabble in YouTube um, in exchange for funding. And that's why I started doing a little bit. Some videos I've deleted since because they were just terrible, but I'm slowly getting better and better. Next month, if all goes correct, I'm signing up to this studio that's just launching. I'm under an NDA, so I can't speak much about it, but it's like right-wing Vice News, and it's coming out of America and Canada, and they're gonna have a very high-quality cameraman, something I don't know much about, and they're also gonna have a very, very good editor, to put it lightly. So hopefully I can make YouTube videos in higher quality now. Because God, me trying to find a cameraman that's willing to go to Afghanistan with like $10,000 cameras and then an editor who wants to look through all my autistic nonsense, very tough. So it's hard to climb, but it's quite good. And plus, at the same time, it allows me to meet more people, if that makes sense. Because again, not everyone's on X, but YouTube, I believe, is the second biggest social media platform, is it not? Most of my stuff won't be allowed on TikTok for obvious reasons, but YouTube is a little bit more fair game.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit here to a
Yeah.
very personal, very dark question. Who do you think the most evil person that you've ever met was?
Mm, interesting. I would say my mother. Because I grew up with her, of course, as my mother, and of course there was both physical and mental abuse, to put it lightly. She also poisoned my cat because she didn't want to buy my cat a cat food. She wanted to save money on just feeding my cat. So instead of giving up for adoption, even she just killed the cat. I don't understand how you can kill an animal like that. It's just for me that's very dark. Hey, even the Taliban love cats. It's crazy to think. And what I endured during my childhood, and I blocked out some of it, and occasionally it comes back to me. I'm like, oh, that really did happen, or oh God, yeah. Mm. And I just don't understand someone with a child how they can do that sort of stuff. She was an alcoholic. She had a lot of mental health issues, so she wasn't obviously, I wouldn't say evil, but there were some very, very bad parts of her that were um, that were prevalent. She was very manipulative. I hate to say this about family members because, of course, I'm very family orientated, or at least in ambition. I want to start a family. I want to have kids. I want to dedicate myself to my future wife. But I dealt with a very rough childhood, to put it lightly, and I experienced that for 18 years. So my earliest memories are of some horrific things that happened at home, and I've not experienced anything similar to that in my extra years. Because of course, I haven't hung around any evil people for 18 years. but it's substantial to me. And of course, I could understand if it came from a stranger, but coming from your own biological mother, someone who's meant to like you, for me, it's closest evil as you probably could get on Earth, from my experience.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
fine.
it definitely it's unfortunate because that's time in your life when you're supposed to be the most happy. So that's one of the
Yeah,
worst things to have a rough childhood because it's one thing you can't fix, right? So one thing inside
yeah.
your but with that being said, I do want to know how were you as a kid, just in general. Like, if I were to interact with Miles in fourth grade, middle school, high school, how was he?
Yeah, sure. So growing up, I was rather poor, but I didn't realize that, which was absolutely fine. And I was from, I would say, up until going into secondary school in the UK, which is like age 12 or age 11, I was obsessed with art. So I liked to draw quite a bit, and I was very creative, I thought. I applied to get into art school, but sadly, well, I did get in, but I couldn't afford the bus. So thankfully, not a Hitler story there. And I was a very teacher's pet type. I would like, for example, in geography class, we were told to draw on a piece of paper a map of um, a top down map of our neighborhood. So I pulled out like the equivalent of 25 A4 pieces of paper and drew a detailed map of the entire neighborhood. I was just a complete sweat. That's what you say in England. I would complete try hard almost. And I would just go over the top with things. And I was very academic because it was also a distraction from going home. Um, and I was like very innocent as a kid. I would just keep doing this stuff. And I really enjoyed school. And I was actually very sensitive. So I remember I forgot to do homework when I was in year eight, when I was like 13, I think. And it's the only time I forgot to do homework. So I thought it was the end of the world and cried a little bit. I was a very soft kid. And then around 16, you know, things at home started getting tough. So I was a bit more reclused, a little bit more keeping to myself. I was kind of depressed. I didn't know how to express that truthfully. But yeah, I was a happy kid and I had some good friends. I had a relationship with two people before I was 18, long term, very fond memories. Um, and yeah, I don't think I really did anything bad to any people, which was quite nice. But I would say when I became an adult, I grew thicker skin, to put it lightly.
So as a kid, did you ever see yourself doing what you're doing now? Like, was there ever like
No,
and there was no like interest to adventure like in that level?
no. I didn't travel abroad until I was 18. And for someone in Europe, in England, you can get a flight from England to Italy for like $20 each way. No kidding, that's how cheap it is. And everyone in school, everyone I knew had been at least outside the country. I hadn't even been 30 miles outside my town. Um, and for me, it was like I was coping in my head. So I was like, oh, people who travel are obsessed with not working. I'm just gonna stay in one place and focus on my work because that's virtuous and that's a good thing to do. And I never thought I would travel abroad, which was really funny. And there was obviously there was no name for what I would end up doing, which is what I'm doing now. Back in the day, no one was really a travel YouTuber. So, and I would never view that content even if it did exist. I thought I was going to become, at first, when I was a kid, an architect. And then I thought I was going to be a physicist because I was studying physics at university. And then afterwards, I was going to go into banking and finance. Um, and then afterwards, I was like, you know what? All these jobs pay like shit, and they're also still somewhat miserable. And the hours I invest in banking are terrible for the money you get paid. So, this has ended up paying a lot better. And I am good at it and I enjoy it. And, even if you're a great architect, usually you don't become famous for it. It's very tough. But God, if you're the first guy to go to Snake Island, or if you're the first guy to document the front lines of Ukraine, or the guy who goes to Tora Bora and makes friends with the Taliban. That's very notable. And hopefully I earn a place in history from that.
5 years from now, where do you see yourself?
Truthfully, probably dead. I've got to be honest. I keep rolling the dice, and I just don't see myself lasting, if that makes sense. Um, I see myself as being able to retire, but choosing not to because money is quite good right now, and I'm a big saver, to put it lightly. Um, so hopefully, I'm doing some more crazy adventures, but it's like one big one a year. So, for example, an Antarctic hike that takes 3 or 4 months, done, and then hopefully I go back home and I have a wife, a child on the way, or at least a child or so. And because instead of working a 9 to 5 for 5, 6 days a week and coming home, I work for 4 months straight, and then I have the remaining 8 months off, which I think is a good trade off for someone. I think that'll be a good divide with things. I also see myself with more published books, and I see a greater portfolio when it comes to Afghanistan, hopefully North Korea, because that's one of my goals, and I can grow from there. I want to be more notable. In 5 years, I want to have at least 1 million subscribers. And obviously, I want my business ventures to play out. So my Afghanistan gold mine, the other ventures I have in Afghanistan, the archaeological digs I'm doing in some areas. I see also a few more wars breaking out within at least 5 years. And the next war that breaks out, there isn't some silly, tiny war I want to be at the forefront of and document.
Is there any type of person that you won't talk to? I know we were joking before about, like, would you interview Jeffrey Epstein? But would you interview somebody like, so there was one guy, right, that kind of comes to mind by the name of Peter Scully. He was in Australia. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I know Peter Scully. Yeah, I've been on iFunny quite a bit. Yeah, I'm Scully pilled. So Peter Scully, he filmed Daisy's Destruction, which is that little, I believe it was a black girl. Basically, he filmed himself doing horrific acts to this newborn baby, and he's in prison in, I think, the Philippines, right?
Yeah, it's like the most horrific
Yeah,
child
yeah,
abuse video on the internet, basically.
yeah. I can see myself talking to him, but I also see myself, if I have a means, to executing that guy. I'm not even kidding. If someone gave me a gun and said, "Hey, Marge, you have permission to execute a pedophile," I would absolutely take that chance. Yes, pretty lightly. Like some people, I am really disgusted by, and I just don't think it would benefit me in any way to interact with them. For example, I mean, I joke about Jeffrey Epstein, but horrific man, horrific man. Again, I wish him to be burning in hell for what he's done to all those poor girls. Same thing with God, the people like I can't say who, but there's lots of people from a certain religion I don't agree with. Just there's a lot of unfortunate people in the world where, of course, I'm interested in them because they're so infamous. I just wouldn't want to be around them. They would just bring nothing but sadness to me, having to interact with them and realizing they're human to some degree, because it's terrible to know that they're the same species almost as me and you know, rapists, mass murderers, people who are cannibals, and everything horrific in between. I just can't imagine what goes through the mind of Peter Scully to do that to Daisy. It's absurd to me. And I have no idea why he's still allowed to walk in this earth and have 3 meals a day and clean water.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting debate, and that kind of brings me to my next question, which is something I don't want to say it's not as bad, but it's still pretty horrific. Cults, right? So cults are everywhere. Right? I mean, you could probably be in a neighborhood in the middle of nowhere, and there's going to be a cult, right?
Mm.
The most infamous, obviously, you include Scientology on that list. They're the most famous one, I think. You get cults like Waco and things like that. My question to you is, would you ever see yourself doing anything with that?
Yeah, I would start a cult. No, I'm kidding. But no, I see myself looking into some cults. I believe there's a lot of cults that basically take aspects of Christianity and they twist it, or some people pretend to be Jesus, and basically have sex with a bunch of people's wives. That's usually what cults turn into, right? Comes into some weird sex club. Um, I would love to potentially infiltrate a cult, or at least speak to some of their members, because I feel like there's a few cults we just don't know about yet that are doing some horrific things. I mean, I can imagine there's like a 10, 20 Epstein Islands out there that are very similar. Or I believe there are more cults out there that just do human sacrifices. There's some very demonic people out there that just hate Christ, which I can't imagine why. Lovely fellow. Yeah, I would love to infiltrate a cult, but at the same time, I feel like they do pat downs to make sure you don't have cameras on you or you're not documenting things. But I think someone has to do it at the end of the day. If it comes across my table, if someone comes with information about a cult, yeah, I would do that. I think I could infiltrate. I've infiltrated countries. I've infiltrated ISIS terrorist groups. I would infiltrate a cult, yeah.
What is your so? I'm gonna ask you like two or three questions, and then we're gonna wrap it up and we'll talk after the show. What is your creative process? What are you doing to come up with a video idea and to make a video?
Of course, yeah. So I would look through YouTube at similar content. So I would look at Boulder Bankrupt, Drew Binsky, some other travel YouTubers who produce high quality videos compared to me, and I'll see what they're doing that's interesting, and I can see if I could do something first that they haven't done. So I look through old Vice news as well, and I Google the most dangerous areas of the world, like a shopping list. And then I look at very old documentaries too. Like um, there's this one old British documentary that I do love, um, and I think it's called The Great Game. It's named after the great historical event. And the way they present things, it's very simple, but very inspiring, and it kind of puts you in that vibe, if that makes sense. It's watching it kind of you associate a unique emotion with it. It's like an infamous movie. When you watch a movie that you love, you kind of get obsessed about it, and it's sort of a unique feeling, an experience compared to just typical entertainment. And then I get inspired through that I want to do something similar, but with one of my adventures. And then again, I look at different countries, and I just don't want to visit a country. I want to do something extreme in one of those countries. People go, "Oh, I'm going to North Korea. I went on a guided tour." No one cares. Everyone's done that. Everyone's done a guided tour in North Korea. Everyone's been to Sudan. Everyone is, popped down to some horrific favelas in Romania or God, Brazil of all places. But it's really tough to actually infiltrate something very unique and get to such a level. Again, many people have been to Afghanistan, but not many people have dealt with the heights of the Taliban government, or been to Tora Bora and excavated the caves and interviewed the people. Um, I think I focus on an idea and I get obsessed about it, and simply just go there and see what I can figure out.
What advice do you have for young people? And I kind of, and I normally, actually, no, let me just start naturally responsive, and then I kind of want to gear it to more something specific.
Yeah, sure. I would say in general with young people, there's always a pressure to impress others. But there's also saying that you shouldn't keep up with the Joneses, as in, you look at social media nowadays, everyone's flexing all these things they have, the latest iPhone, nice watches, cars, and so on. I think people need to live very humbly at the end of the day. I come across a lot of rich people. I know there's one guy called Nick. He's worth about 40 million. He wears a jeans and t-shirt, and he never really talks about money. It's a lovely fellow, and he's surrounded by people who constantly talk about the most niche things that basically try and prove it. He tries to sorry, very tired. There's people try and act very rich around him, try and dress very flashy, and they try and stock up to Nick a little bit. But Nick basically doesn't really care, and he's friends with me because I don't care either, and I don't try and suck up to him. You just gotta keep it real sometimes. So I feel like when you're very young, you should obviously try and find something you're good at that can make you money, but just don't fake it and don't destroy your paycheck on trying to impress others, which is very common. I would also say save as much money as you can and just invest it in the index funds, in the SP 500. It's made me a lot of money, to put it lightly. And the average savings in the UK at the age of 65 are about, I think it's about $50,000. So everyone in my country is broke, unfortunately. Um, and finances do mean happiness to a lot of people. If you have a roof over your head, if you're able to afford food, if you're able to afford time, as long as you can provide for your children, it's a very good life. I would also say get married early as well. Um, I don't have that luxury because I'm always on the road, so it's tough to do relationships. But I think if you have a childhood sweetheart, if you're dating someone at 18, 19, 20, and you've been dating for 2 or 3 years, talk about marriage. And if you're both happy, I would just say do it. Because it'll be very nice to have someone very early on they can grow old with. The other advice for people is you've just got to pick something and just obsess about it. Um, Again, there was no framework for me going into travel YouTube stuff and doing this business stuff, but I've just become delusionally optimistic. And then from that, it's a feedback loop for people saying, oh, he is a great British explorer. And of course, it's motivating me more to actually become very good at it. Simply, you can just do things. Most people are paralyzed by decision fatigue and decision fear, or what if I pick the wrong choice? I think you should just make a choice, and if it goes wrong, you make it the opposite decision next, and you perfect your craft basically.
Second to last question. Actually, no, this is probably the last question. How do you find adventure in life?
Yeah. Um, when you're constantly traveling, and 2 days ago I was in a Greek jail. 1 month ago, I was playing with guns in Afghanistan. 2 years ago, I almost died on islands in Brazil. So, you think my adrenaline would be shot, as in my tolerance would be really high, but simply just going to the beach and just watching the ocean, or just going to a nice little aesthetic cafe and just drinking and scrolling on your phone, or just talking to a couple of old people that you just meet at a restaurant or in the airport. I think that's really nice because it feels personal, it feels very real, and it's very memorable. I think adventures can be found in very basic things in life, and they bring you peace at the end of the day. Again, I get a lot of likes on social media, I get a lot of positive attention, also a lot of negative, but overwhelmingly positive. And on my deathbed, I'm not going to be thinking, oh, the great adventure was me getting this many likes on this post. It's going to be, oh, I managed to look at nature and I managed to have some amazing relationships with some people. And that was a well rounded life. I think that's the real adventure, doing these very simple things that people take for granted.
All right. I think that's a good place to end off.
Thanks,
Any
man.
final words to the audience?
I would say live, love, laugh, like and subscribe. And I'm very sorry that you guys had to listen to my ramblings for an hour.
Happy to do it, and you're always welcome back on. All right.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
God bless.
You too. In 3, 2, 1.